All right, guys, want to say welcome to it. If you find I'm laughing and giggling too early in the show, that's because we just had a private joke off mic. You understand? So I want to say welcome to it. This is Everyday Lessons. Want to welcome Dr. Amala. Once again, we're on the platform. We're doing it well. You guys know how to get us. You can send all your information. It's always popping up there for you to see. You can send your feedback. You can send an email. You can even ask a question. And most definitely we're going to get to you guys. All right. So I want to thank you so much once again for being a part of it. And we are here.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And I'm actually happy for this topic because someone sent it to me. And I thought that I would talk about it because a lot of times we're unable to sort of distinguish. And again, it goes back to using your vocabulary and understanding and having a wider and deeper, perhaps, set of words to use so that we're not, just saying the same things over and over, and that we're able to distinguish, because these three feelings that I'm going to talk about are three different things. And one of the reasons that I thought it was important to discuss it is because we've had a spate of recent suicides that were popular. They were in the public domain. And it led me to think about bullying, really, and how people are unable to manage relationships well. And then it leads others, in some cases, to do themselves harm, irreparable harm in this case, because you can't come back and, you can't tell the person that you're sorry or whatever, but your words or your actions may have driven somebody to the point where they feel, listen, this is the only way out. And so one of the things that's really interesting to me is, especially on social media, there are people who you know to be bullies. And, sometimes they put mean comments and you see it and you don't say anything. And then when someone dies, someone they do not know, they'll be the first set of people to post about calling the suicide hotline. So I find it very disingenuous. And I think that we ought to examine ourselves a little more and understand how our words could be hurtful and the sort of impact that they could have. So what I wanted to talk about today was shame, guilt, and embarrassment, and how those things are different, how we should be defining them differently, and how we can understand what they are and where they exist on the scale of consciousness, because there's a scale of consciousness that was developed by Dr. David Hawkins, and how he describes emotions and where emotions reside and so on. And really, if we look at that scale, shame is at the bottom. So shame is really a low level vibration. So if someone is feeling ashamed, or if you cause someone to feel shame, you're causing them to operate at the low end. It's a force that is pushing them down as opposed to power that is pulling them up. Mm-hmm. So you really aren't doing them any good. And sometimes it is your intention to harm them or to shock them into compliance with what you need done. So narcissists and bullies and so on use that type of power. And they generally want to cause harm. So shame really is a sense that you've done something wrong and it cannot be repaired. So you feel shame about it, and shame is really deep-seated. You feel that you're unworthy of love, and you feel that you are irreversibly flawed. So imagine when we start posting on social media about people's features, and their features came from God. They can't do anything about it. If someone did not alter their features, then why are you, who cannot alter their features by creating them, why are you saying that someone looks like a man, or their body is in this shape or whatever, and is not something that you have control over, nor they, And I listened to Ruma Willis. She was saying something on a video that I recently watched, and people were really mean to her, and there was nothing that she could do. They were just in the comments, and so people are advising her, well, don't read the comments, but come on, if you don't comment, then there wouldn't be comments for her to read if you don't be mean.
Correct.
And there's no need to be mean. And so shame is really a painful emotion. And not everybody understands how to deal with it. And it's caused by a consciousness of guilt. So somebody feels guilty about something. They're like, oh, well, maybe whatever it is you said, and they start to internalize it now. And they start to think it's a shortcoming that they have. And they were good all along before you brought it up, or they internalized it but didn't think that it was something that, it was so glaring, and then it sort of becomes like this humiliating disgrace that they're trying to deal with. And it may not necessarily be the case, Then embarrassment, on the other hand, is fleeting. So embarrassment could be if you call someone the wrong name, like if it's a friend and you call them the wrong name, like it's John, and you like, hey Tom, what's up? And
Embarrassment on which end you talking about? The person inflicting or
the person,
receiving?
yes, yeah, and in both cases, but whatever it is, embarrassment is fleeting. So if you go out to dinner and you spill wine on your dress, that's a small embarrassment. If you spill coffee on a white shirt, those things go away because they can be fixed. And sometimes you want to make sure that, something stays in the embarrassment realm as opposed to getting into the line of shame, especially if you really have no control over it.
So how do we define an embarrassing, shameful situation at the same time? Let me explain.
Well,
like,
go ahead.
Like, I don't know if you heard the story before. It's like Jerry one time trying to be nice and compliment someone. Like, was telling a young lady, oh my God, I haven't seen you in such a long time. You're glowing. You look so beautiful. How far along are you?
And thought, right. Yeah.
Thinking that the person was pregnant. So he felt embarrassed, I'm sure. Well, not I'm sure. I knew he felt embarrassed when she answered, she's not. But then she had a face of shame. Because now she's feeling as though, oh my God, do I look that bad? Bad being, I'm not saying that pregnancy is a bad thing, but she wasn't pregnant.
But no, she's
as a woman, she's like, oh my God, this man thinks I'm pregnant. So that means I put on too much weight.
Right.
So now is left in a real bad place where he innocently was trying to compliment you and say, hey, I haven't seen you in such a while, give you some love and say, hey, congratulations on the baby. And you're not pregnant.
But you could chalk it up to being a mistake if you know genuinely that this person is not a mean-spirited person. It has a different feel.
Right. I think she knew that. I think she knew that.
Right. So it could be embarrassing for both of you, but you now understand, oh my gosh, like you said, oh my gosh, maybe I gained too much weight. I really need to get this under control, whatever. I don't need people thinking I'm pregnant and I'm not, and you could let it end there. However, the people around him now, they will probably feel shame because they're like, how you don't know that this lady's not pregnant? Like you wouldn't know. There are other signs. It's not just a belly, and that could bring a level of shame that he now internalizes. So having a conversation about it would allow you to understand, hey, really, I made a mistake, and and if it's something like that, then you're able to apologize and it's over and done with. And then you should learn from that, not to do it again. So unless you see somebody with a baby,
that's the only time you come. I'm sure now that's what he does. He only congratulates people with babies, with actual babies in their hand.
Yes, exactly. Do not assume. Even if it looks like a duck,
it might not be a duck. Dig for real. The will go in. Even though she looks like Sherry, she might not be Sherry. It might actually be Sean. Just saying, it happens. So we have to be mindful that you cannot just assume. No, and that's a big thing too in the transgender community. You have to be mindful because especially how sensitive it is when they're actually transcending. The most crucial and important part about that, and why we're talking about shame, guilt, and embarrassment, you have to bring it into the conversation inside of that. How you call it? The acronyms. The LGBT community. Why? Because from everything I've read and in conversations I've had, the hardest time for them is when they're transitioning.
Yes.
Because you have to respect the fact that they emotionally and mentally they're already going through a lot.
It's not easy. Exactly.
It's not easy. Because you're talking about coming to terms with the shame of telling your parents. Especially if you come from a home that, like a West Indian home, you know how that goes already.
Right,
and
exactly.
That's the first bit of it. So that's the shame. Then the guilt now of, it's like you feeling guilty.
The guilt that your parents put on you.
Right.
Because and guilt, if I'm to define guilt is really feeling responsibility for having done something wrong. Most times it's breaking a law. So when your parents inflict, especially in let's say the LGBTQ community, when you go and you come out to somebody and you are now ostracized for being who you are, how is that fair? Right? So that is, and that's why those emotions actually reside at the bottom of the spectrum, because those are all low vibrational emotions. And so people don't get the chance to get to the point of, because if someone comes out, they want to be loved, they want to be embraced, they want you to say, hey, no matter what, I
just
understand.
support,
Listen,
just
I'm
support.
your biggest advocate.
Just
right?
support, they want support.
If you don't give them that, then they're not able to feel that sense of pride, they're not able to feel that love, they're not able to feel peace. And most times what you want is to have that sense of peace, like, okay, I've had this burden for so long, now I no longer have it, you know? So guilt is something that others impose on you, unless, of course, having healthy guilt is fine because it would allow you to free yourself of a burden. So in some cases where someone may have done something wrong and then they think about it and they're like, you know what, let me apologize to you because I really feel guilty about doing whatever. That is healthy guilt. So that's not something that someone has imposed on you. You knew it was wrong, or when you thought about it after, you're like, listen, I might have been able to do that in a better way, you know, whatever, I really apologize. That's the kind of thing that you would really like. So while guilt and shame may feel the same for a moment, they diverge at a point. Guilt stops at, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, this is what, you know, I can do. Shame that comes from guilt says, I am a mistake. So if we go back now to transitioning people or to someone who's just come out to you and you make them feel like you have let down the family, how could you? I thought, and you start getting all preachy with them, then they're like, well, I'm a mistake. Like, what happened? And that shame, if not resolved, could cause people to do harmful things to themselves.
Correct.
And so that is where we need to look at the words that we use, look at how we embrace people and how we manage our relationships with them with our self-awareness, because now you're getting into a state of being preachy with somebody that, you know, that wasn't your call to make.
And you don't fully have a grasp on the understanding of what they're going through internally. Because, especially as I was saying, the transition phase, like from a woman to a man, we're talking about a lot of the hormone pills that they use. The fact that they go under the knife. Remember, some of them, they remove their breasts, and then they have to take hormone tablets and those sort of things. And the hormone tablets allow them to have facial hair and all of these little things. But in that process, the actual health of these people are sometimes played with. And it weakens them.
Mental health too.
Mental health and physical health, because sometimes there's side effects with the medication. Some of them are sick. And when you go into all of that and then have to be faced with family members saying nasty things, sending nasty messages. So you have to be mindful that around that time, these are people that will need, as you say, is a different kind of love and attention and support that they will need. So as I say, I had to mention it as we're talking about, because that's a good example of some people who experience all the low vibrations at once.
Exactly. It
doesn't come in spurts to them. They go through the entire frequency, the low frequency.
Stay there for a while.
For a long time.
Yes.
For a long time.
So we have to be mindful, because you don't know until someone comes to tell you. Be nice to everybody, because you don't know what people are going through individually unless they tell you. Because some people wait to come say something. Some people never say something and they live with it for a long time. So can you imagine that state of depression that somebody lives with because they don't want to be judged? And they're just sitting there going through it day after day, and they're thinking, if I could only say something. And it's not just about coming out. It's about anything, because sometimes people have issues that because they don't want to be judged, they're not going to tell you. So most times it's only when people are able to drag themselves out of it by themselves, then you hear. Like today I read a story about a girl who is now selling NFTs. I think she lives in Chicago, but when someone first told her about, she's a very good artist, and she would take photographs and so on, but she said she was having a tough time trying to book people for like a $50 shoot, and even sell a hard copy of a photo for $30. She had $10 in her account, and somebody got her into this thing, and they paid whatever fees for a friend of hers was nice to her. And then last year, she was able to make over $100,000 selling these
Wow.
NFTs. But she never told anybody. She said she was really struggling. She lived on like ramen and water for months at a time
I
because
feel
her
her pain.
salary, pardon?
I feel her pain. I know. I
Her
can relate.
salary just wasn't getting it. She wasn't able to make ends meet. And now what she's doing, she is actually reaching back and pulling people up. She's paying fees for people and encouraging people and so on. It was a really lovely story to read. But I'm saying in her thing of being embarrassed and not wanting to be made ashamed, she was quiet about it. She never said anything. She just kept trying to reach out to people to get her business going and so on. But she was having a tough time. So we have to make space for others just by being kind, just by being kind, just be nice to people because, you know, you don't know what people are going through. And actually last night, a friend of mine was telling me that he was homeless for a while. And, you know, nobody knew he was homeless because of how he continued to carry himself. And he lived in a shelter for a couple of months, I think like 5 or 6 months or something. He said he remembers passing this guy on the streets outside of the subway, you know, and he would always say hello to the guy and whatever. And sometimes if he had money, he would give the guy money, buy him a meal. The guy never spoke to him, never said anything. You know, he would acknowledge him, but never said anything. The guy would be reading sometimes and so on. And then he was staying in a shelter and he got in late one night and they gave up his bed to somebody. So he didn't have a bed for that night. And then apparently when he went to check in, the lady said, oh, but you know, this guy over here, he was really arguing to keep your bed because he knew you would come. And they weren't friends. They weren't friends. But somebody in a situation who is in the same kind of bad situation is advocating for someone else. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know, he was happy that he would always greet the guy, say hi to him or whatever when he was working and had, you know, when he had money, he would give him money and so on. Because he never thought that he and this guy would end up in the same homeless shelter. And that was such a heartwarming story because now he has his own place and so on. So he's back to, you know, being normal.
Right, yeah.
But he said, you know, you should never look down on people. And that was like a really nice thing to hear. It was so heartwarming, you know, that you
hear these stories all the time. And I always say, like, you have to understand where you are in terms of geographically as well. Like, you sent me something yesterday. And I edited it and I posted it only because right now more than ever, it's important. Mm-hmm. Whereas we live in a time where all of these things, shame, guilt, and embarrassment, force you into a cocoon.
Absolutely.
And you don't speak out. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times you just try your best to stay above water, to figure it out. And it comes a time when you're back against the wall and you have no choice. Mm-hmm. You understand? And it's really cool when you can, maybe sometimes you might even be able to call somebody to actually help you out of the situation one time, like to say, well, okay, what do you need? $5? Here it is. But to have somebody that you can actually express how you're feeling in that moment, just the conversation might allow you the time and space you need to figure something out the next day. Because when you're frustrated in something, you might be seen in front. It might be seen much right in front of you. Somebody with a different perspective might say, hey, just ask for a week extension. And maybe in a week time, we'll be able to figure it out.
Right.
Ask for a couple of days and we'll figure it out in a couple of days. And I've experienced that recently, like over the past couple of months, because it's been very, very tricky. So you have to kind of navigate a lot of things. But I keep saying, and I say to you all the time, is like sometimes when people continuously trying to take from your cup and your cup is not being replenished,
right,
it's very difficult.
And on that note, I want to say you have to do the work on yourself so that you can help other people. So if you want to, you can't tell somebody or you can't show somebody love if you don't love yourself, you know, because you can't give from an empty cup.
Can't.
So, you know, you have to understand what love is, what self-love is. And then you're like, okay, I can do this for you. And you're not doing it necessarily for love in return, but because you love yourself, you're able to give and give freely, you know, so it feels different. It feels different.
Of course. And it doesn't feel forced. And it doesn't feel like one of the worst things you could do is do something grudgingly, as you say, like, you know, like, because it never ends well.
Right.
So you have to do it from a good place and smile when you're doing it. It's like I tell
Exactly.
everybody, you hear a good song when you know an artist smile while recording it. You could hear it in you could hear it in the lyrics. You know, there's certain songs that you smile when you hear it because the
Of
person
course.
was smiling when they sang it.
Yes.
And that is
Yes.
just how it is. So when somebody gives you something with love, you will receive it with love. And it's gonna, to me, it lasts longer. It
Yes.
doesn't mash up, it doesn't stop working. When you get something brand new from somebody and it didn't working next week because they never wanted to give. My granny always used to say that if it didn't work, he never wanted to give it to you, give them back. So, but when you think about it, it might be something to that. It's like, when you give somebody something with love, you hear 10 years later, they
still have that.
Boy, you
Yes.
remember that thing you had lend me? Say,
Right.
I still have that. And you're like, you lie.
Yeah.
And you're shocked because when it
It's
happened in
from
the
a
moment,
genuine place.
it came from a genuine place. So you see? So guys, just like that. And next one.
Yep. We are done.
We are done. Want to say much love, thanks, and blessings for those of you logging on. Remember, continue to send your comments, send your feedback. We welcome
Yes,
feedback
please.
regularly across here. We build for feedback. That's what we love. So, in fine style, we leave you like this.